Have you ever experienced something and had no words to truly describe exactly what it is? Maybe it's a feeling, maybe it's a creative idea, maybe it's relating to your sense of self-worth. Whatever it is, you understand the thing, but you can't express to others through words exactly what this thing is or what it implies. This sort of thing, it happens to everyone. It's common, normal even, to have things like these pop up, and it's just okay to not need to ever have anyone else know about this thing that will eat at you for at least a while. But what if it doesn't stop eating at you? What if the thing, the experience, the idea is something that you can't ignore? What if your entire worldview is colored in some way by the need to express this thing, this unknowable, unspeakable, incalculable thing? Then what? Do you attempt to pathologize the thing as a problem and seek medication? Do you try to do things that alleviate the thing? Or maybe you just genuinely do nothing and consider it the normality of the world that everyone has things that eat them every single second of every single day? The means by which mental illness is perceived is largely still hindered by the lack of words to describe the way that mental wellness feels. As such, it's morphed into several different perceptions, each slightly differently perceived depending on the diagnoses in question. There's almost no way to know how to tell someone in absolute truth the feeling that gender dysphoria or depression or anxiety feels. However, such is the failure of words. The arts of visual media, such as art, film, and video games, all attempt to establish feelings irrespective of the words used to convey them. Through this art, it's possible to begin to spread a modicum of an idea of how those conditions feel, or spread a sort of awareness as to a form of personal diagnosis. This art is attempting a Herculean task of creating empathy in those without a baseline of that experience. There is a single piece of art I've ever seen that has ever been able to effectively express to me the feeling portrayed so viscerally, so powerfully, so completely. This is milk inside a bag of milk, inside a bag of milk. Milk is a visual novel that follows a girl as she attempts to travel to the convenience store to purchase a bag of milk for her mother. However, as opposed to other visual novels in which the protagonist is either a largely uninteresting self-insert figure who serves to move the plot forward, or is a character whose individual decisions are largely unaffected by the player's dialogue choices, in Milk, neither of these are the case. The protagonist is her own character, and you serve the role of the voice inside her head. As the voice in Milk Girl's head, you become privy to the ways in which she sees the world. It's a distorted, almost unrecognizable pink and black mess of an image of society. People look inhuman, and their mannerisms are even less recognizable to Milk Girl. The ways in which her quest to get milk are obstructed are entirely internal: her addled vision, her failures in social interaction, and most notably, you. The unique part of Milk is that you, as the player, not only can affect the events of the game, but also Milk Girl's mental state. As the game continues, your words, depending on how kind or mean you are to Milk Girl, will directly affect whether or not she manages to actually purchase the bag of milk that she's trying to get. So for many first-time players, the question will be one of empathy. Do you want to actively make this girl's life and night worse for effectively no reason other than your own amusement? Or do you want to do your best to help her? If you help her, she purchases the milk, then returns home and goes to bed. Lying about the effectiveness of her medication, she tells you, the player, about some of the symptoms and causes of her illness. If you don't, however, Milk Girl will reject you from her mind, effectively ending the game. For us, we restart the game, but for Milk Girl to do this is to recognize yet another coping mechanism that she's created to deal with the horrifying and challenging reality that she's faced with has failed, and now sees herself as better off without an internal monologue. For those who suffer from mental illness, this cruelty that you are allowed to participate in is an obvious connection to the somewhat common experience for those suffering from depression, in which the internal monologue is seemingly hostile, or at least very bleak. Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk is a game that seeks to, through common gaming tropes and visual novel format, express the unique difficulties that someone with a mental illness faces when doing even the most mundane of tasks. The player may become frustrated at Milk Girl for her indecision, or maybe even find it difficult to understand why she does what she does. But through expressing the thought process of someone who is dealing with the incredibly challenging reality of mental illness, it seeks to create a sense of perspective. There's an old saying, it's been beaten to death and back by now, but walk a mile in their shoes. This game is to make another metaphor within a metaphor, the proverbial shoes. Milk creates empathy in the player by asking them to be as kind as they can to someone who is in incredible pain, despite the perceived inconvenience to them. And through this request for the basic dignities awarded to any other person, the player is practicing mindfulness. By making the player the key determinant in whether or not Milk Girl has a good day, her internal dialogue, the way she reflects on her own actions, it forces the player into an extremely uncomfortable position, and by further limiting the player's options to passive-aggressive at best and downright evil at worst, Milk creates a uniquely uncomfortable experience for the player. When I first walked away from playing Milk on New Year's Eve of last year, I was more or less incapable of coming up with an opinion for several hours. What I just played completely changed my worldview in a lot of ways. Obviously, it was the game an exact one-to-one recreation of the universal experience of every mentally ill person. No, of course not. That's impossible. But what it did do for me, and the reason I was taken aback by it for so long, I feel, is because I saw myself in it. Before I'd played Milk, I'd look in the mirror and find myself more than a little repulsed by myself. I'd stare at myself and not understand that the face I was looking back at was my own, that I inhabited my own body. I could never understand that before, and I'd been depressed before. It's not like I didn't know I had something up with me, but the way that Milk Girl's view of the world, of those around her, the distortion of it all, I found myself staring into it and back at myself and seeing that same face, the body that doesn't feel like my own. I came to the conclusion that I was non-binary months before this, but I feel for the first time playing this game that I was able to look at how I felt and say with certainty that I was feeling dysphoria. I knew the book definition of dysphoria, and I understood it. But what the definition in the book doesn't give you is the emotional recognition to recognize it when it happens to you. I think that Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk is a testament to the power that games can hold as a medium, and time again, what makes gaming so unique is the interactive nature of the game. If Milk were an animated short, I would probably still adore it, but because of the crippling horror being yours to experience, its message and ability to bridge the gaps between people and ideas is more apparent. Milk is so powerful as a game because it can't truly be expressed in its full capacity in any other form of art. Its cacophony of harsh synths, destitute yet vibrant scenes, and bleak and clever writing are what make this game work. So, I'll ask again. Have you ever had something you just can't express?